So you guys have a few questions on your table, and I'd like to just ask that your table pick one of these questions, spend 3 or 4 minutes discussing it, and then some of you might be willing to share out kind of your thoughts around these questions. So I'm going to be quiet for a couple more minutes and let you guys kind of have some table talk, and then we'll kind of kick things off once I learn a little bit more about your perspective on STEM. Share a little bit about what you discussed in those very short 3 minutes that I gave you. Anyone?
Some sort of STEM or something.
Name and library you represent.
I'm Tucker from Valley of the Tetons Library in Briggs. So the question we discussed briefly was, do you consider yourself a STEM educator? So I've been doing a lot of STEM stuff at the library for a few years now, but more and more I've been steering away from the STEM designation in favor of maker education. And a big reason is really just how many times I got the question from teachers like, is this STEMmy enough? Or, I'm sorry that this isn't STEMmy enough, but it steps out of my wheelhouse, and usually it's something that's really awesome. So I'm like, no, it's teaching the design process, it's allowing opportunities for troubleshooting and creative thinking, and that is really all foundational stuff for STEM anyway. So if it keeps people feeling more comfortable and feeling like they have the knowledge base to provide that education, I think it's good. So I've had much more success in maker education.
Thank you. Perfect. Anyone else?
I'll just kind of tack on to that. I'll just kind of tack on to that with what we talked about. We talked about the same question, and some of us felt like we were STEM educators and some of us felt like we weren't, so we kind of discussed why that differentiation happens. And we talked about how the great thing about STEM education, and especially in our positions in libraries, is that we don't have to be experts to be educators, because we can find that information out. So as long as we're willing to learn, we can figure it out, and we can help teach the people that we're working with, but also we teach them that process, that they don't have to rely on a teacher or Google or a textbook to know the answer, that they have the ability and the power to figure out why something's conducted, or figure out what a scientific term means, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
One more table? Anyone else? Okay, excellent.
Let's write it down. Perfect. That's why they sit up.
I'm Sherry. I'm from the Donley Library. Our table, we didn't necessarily pick the question, but we kind of, our conversation went into the question. But what are the barriers for providing STEM activity and resources in your library? And what I noticed is that and Lewiston isn't the largest library in the state, obviously, but they're much bigger than most. And I'm probably one of the smallest libraries in the state. Square footage-wise, I'm probably the smallest. And our problem is the same, though. It's staffing. Having staff that has the knowledge, having staff that's willing, and finding that staff.
Thank you very much. I think I'm really excited to be with you here today because it's an opportunity for me to kind of share a little bit about my journey and how I've come to just really embrace libraries in particular and after-school education. And so, the STEM Action Center, we've only been in business about 3.5 years, and we came to be because of issues such as this. Last year in Idaho, there were over 6,300 unfilled STEM jobs. We let people know that in Idaho, STEM jobs pay nearly double the median wage of a non-STEM job, so they're paying about over $30 an hour now for those individuals that choose to go into a STEM profession. STEM is defined very broadly from our perspective, and as was mentioned by Tucker, we definitely believe that it is truly integrated, and that it is a process. It's not just science. I was a science teacher, and I was incredibly siloed, and that was the life that I lived for many, many years, teaching in public high schools right here in Idaho. And so through this process, I've come to really embrace the meaning of STEM, learning that it does involve critical and creative thinking. It involves project-based learning and all sorts of different opportunities besides just teaching my science content standards. So, and Idahoans, you know, when I present to the legislature talking about the $22 million that is lost in Idaho because these jobs are unfilled. This is kind of a busy slide, but kind of regurgitating the same information in 2018. So with those unfilled jobs, Idahoans missed out on over $400 million in personal income that we could have gained had those jobs been filled. The future looks incredibly bright for Idaho, however. You can see that we are predicted to have some pretty significant technology sector growth, about 26% growth in our technology sector. Back in 2004 through 2014, you can see our growth in Idaho was exceptionally low and really far below the national average. So we're anticipating some really robust growth. And I think libraries are going to be the key in some communities to making sure we have a workforce that can fill these jobs that are currently unfilled. In fact, this morning I was doing some, looking at some data. Last month in April, 7,800 unfilled STEM jobs. If we can't get these jobs filled, our economy is going to really come to a screeching halt. And I'm a firm believer that we can grow our own right here in Idaho. We know we're the fastest growing state in the nation. People are coming here to Idaho. They are bringing their children here into our education system. Some people are choosing not to come because they believe we don't have a high quality education system into which they want to put their children. We have to change that narrative on Idaho education, and it truly begins not only what happens in the formal classroom, but out of school as well. I mean, as you guys know, which at the time I've been learning, you know, children spend 80% of their time outside of a formal classroom setting. So we have to do more, and we have to expand our thinking of what education means. And I think through the STEM Action Center and our work, we've been able to do that, and it really has helped me grow and understand a lot of the needs that our kids have here in Idaho. So we were born in 2015, and Governor Otter luckily picked me to start the STEM Action Center. And through that, we truly do have a vision of this equitable, thriving ecosystem in which all of our citizens have access to an opportunity to access STEM education and become STEM literate. So when I took the job, Governor Otter calls me in and he says, "Hey, can you start my STEM Action Center?" And he slides over these 4 pieces of paper. And it was the legislation that created the center, right? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I teach high school. I don't really know. And that's what I said to the governor. I said, I don't know, let's find out. You know, let me give it a try. Let's jump in here. I'll do the very best I can, given this legislature that I have sitting in front of me. So I go into the office, very first day of work, super excited to start my new job. I got my little lunchbox on my shoulder, and I'm going into my one-room office, and I push open the door, and I paused, because there was no computer. I was like, oh my gosh, we don't even have a website. I don't have a chair. I don't have a telephone. Oh my gosh, I don't have a pen, and I had nowhere to microwave my lunch. So we really have built the center from absolutely, you know, just me with 4 pieces of paper, no pen, and a cold lunch, to kind of some of the opportunities that we're able to provide today. So through Idaho Code, a number of you I know have been involved in a variety of our different programs, be it grants, competitions, professional development. We're going to have a table when we all convene back in the library, so feel free and stop by. Caitlin, Finnea, John are here kind of representing the center with me. We can tell you about some of these exciting upcoming opportunities that we have to offer. So, wow. One of my very first calls I got was from Anne, yes. I'd been on the job about a week, at least by then I had a phone. And so Ann calls and says, hey, we've got this great STEM program called Make It at the Library. Come on over and meet some of my team. Let's share with you what we're doing here and see if we can form some type of partnership. I didn't have the busy schedule, didn't yet have a computer, so I decided I had some time to go over and visit the commission. And that's where I met Sue, and that's where I met Erica Compton. And we had just a fabulous conversation about all the amazing opportunities in STEM that were occurring in libraries. And it made me realize how naive I had been as a teacher in a STEM classroom. I hadn't recognized the value and importance of libraries and all the changes that had been occurring throughout the library system. And so I left there just amazed at all the work that you were doing with those students. I left there recognizing that as a formal educator, I really had not appreciated the value that informal education or education that occurs outside of a traditional classroom really can bring to a child's life, can enrich communities, and really make a difference in education. And so it's been over the course of these last 3 years that I've really had an opportunity to step back and understand that it wasn't that I didn't appreciate out-of-school learning, it was just that I didn't know. I went into my career to be a teacher and to be a formal classroom teacher and to teach standards. And that's what I did, and to understand assessments and to meet state mandates. And from there, I think the last 3 years I've spent a lot of time really just recognizing that we've got to do more. No longer do I use the word teacher in my vocabulary. I've really tried to scrub that word and use the word educator, because that, I think, really encompasses the fact that education occurs for the whole child in a school setting, as well as outside of school settings, at home, and throughout the community. So I really appreciate everyone being so patient with me as I've been able to kind of step back and reframe my thinking about what education truly means and the possibilities of our educational system here in Idaho. So you'll see that even in our goals, we talk about educators, we don't talk about teachers. We really are working to align education and workforce. Workforce is what the governor and legislators really focus on. And they're helping them understand how our K-12 or pre-K-12 system feeds into this bigger picture of workforce development. And so that's another area that we're focused on. And then wonderful events like this that help increase awareness, opportunity, networking for you amongst your colleagues. We think those are very important as well. As has already been mentioned, the 21st century skill development that comes through STEM is another kind of talking point as we're talking to businesses and industries, that STEM education allows students, children to collaborate, to communicate, to think critically, to problem solve. These are skills that industry today still says our kids show up and don't know how to do very well. And so those are very mindful. I know many of you push those skills into the work that you do with individuals at your library, be it children or sometimes even adults can use a little refresher on some of the skill development as well. So we do have about a $4.6 million budget. However, we did receive a $1 million budget cut. So those of you that know legislators in your communities and have received some support and funding from the STEM Action Center, perhaps could let them know the importance of the funding that comes to the STEM Action Center and the need to perhaps at least get us back to levels that we've traditionally been at. So it will definitely be a challenge. Those of you that are familiar with our programs, you're going to see some programs are going to disappear. Others are going to be reduced. $1 million represents 25% of what we're able to push out the door. We are really busy fundraising and grant writing, trying to bring additional funding into Idaho's education system, but it really is a challenge. And if we could get a more stable legislative appropriation, I just can only imagine the amazing things we could accomplish. So I would be forever grateful if you could, don't say Angela said, but perhaps consider reaching out and informing a legislator in your community about the impact that STEM Action Center funding has had on you, those individuals you work with, or your community as a whole. It would be greatly appreciated. So I'd like to celebrate a few of the libraries that we've had an opportunity to work with, and if I've left your library out, it's simply, again, I'm learning and I'm probably naive, and I'll give you a chance at the end to share your story. So I think, is there anyone from Glens Ferry? Okay, excellent. I'll just make this story up then. So Glens Ferry has really done a phenomenal job. If your community's looking at how to host a series of family STEM nights, really getting some new technologies, high tech and low tech, everything from cardboard to we-dos to makey-makeys and wind turbines, that sort of stuff. Glens Ferry has really found a way to engage the community. They've held multiple STEM nights with some of our funding, and they are reporting some pretty phenomenal outcomes just by getting their community really involved, opening the doors and showing them that libraries truly are more than books. McCall Public Library is another one that I know has been partnering with other libraries in the region. So they've partnered with Donley and with Cascade to do some really awesome collaboration, networking, leadership. Do you want to speak about your partnerships? Because otherwise I'll just make
We weren't one of the You were a collaborator.
Library, yeah. So they did we had not yet formed as a library district when they began working on it. And so we were a little late to the table, if you will. And so it was like just a week before it happened, Casey called and said, hey, can you come to this training that we're doing? And Salmon Library came down, and the STEM Action Center came up to McCall, and they brought in all of the community partners. So we had the Payette Lakes After School program, which is in McCall. They had Valley County 4-H, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, the high school, the junior high. I think there was a total of 20 community partners represented at the training. And they got a really great grant from the STEM Action Center. And so everybody who participated in the training, I think got $1,000, which has turned around and benefited our library because 4-H spent their money on purchasing equipment for the Donley Library for us to check out. So and I learned things at that training. I mean, I was really naive, and then obviously the new girl on the block, but we played with things at that training that I had never played with a makey, and I know everyone in this room has probably played with one. I had never even seen one. So I was at this training and I was like a little kid in the candy store over a makey. And everybody made so much fun of me, and so May from the McCall Library, she came over and she gave me one. At the training, she was like, this is yours. And we had it was less than a week later, and I had all the kids playing with it, and we had a patron walk in and saw the joy on the kids' faces. And so she went out, and the next week we now have 5 Makeys at our little library. And one of the wonderful things, my favorite story at our library, well, one of my favorite stories, is it happened like just about a month and a half ago. And on Fridays, we let the kids play video games and do other things, but we always try and find an alternative way for them to do it. And I told them that they could play video games, they could even play Roblox if they found if they did not touch the keyboard. And a grandpa came in to pick his son up, his grandson, and he sat down, and for 45 minutes, he watched his grandson play a version of Donkey Kong with Play-Doh. And he came up to the desk when he was leaving, and he was like, I don't know if I've ever spent that much time with my grandson in one setting. And because he just sat there and played with him, and he was actually enjoying it. And that grandpa, if it would have just been a regular controller, would have never sat there, because it would have been just another video game. But he was so proud of his grandson because he had built the controller out of Play-Doh, and he had different colors representing different things, and he was like, I had no idea he was that smart. And the beauty of the situation for me is that for an hour and a half, I actually hadn't talked to the kid. So he had just done it all on his own. And all he needed was the tools, and the STEM Action Center, through that training, we got those tools.
Thank you.
Anyone here from Payette? Excellent, here we go. So, Payette has also done some fabulous stuff. If you're looking for ways to really integrate industry partners into your library and understand how they could be potentially valuable supporters, I would encourage you to reach out to Payette. They've got some really cool projects going on, especially with Idaho Power, doing a variety of different type of circuitry, as well as water sampling. Lots of stuff going on in the Payette Library. So if you're looking for a way to integrate partners, they would be a really strong asset to reach out to. Valley of the Tetons is on the list. Okay, this is my understanding, Tucker. Here we go. So when you first took the job, making was not really known at the library very well, and there were definitely a lack of resources at the library, and so you've been working really hard to get your board behind you and encourage others to get the resources you need. And also, I think the other thing that I had mentioned earlier is it's another place where formal education hadn't been to the library in a really long time. So connecting with some of those public school educators, helping them understand the value and assets that are in the library. And so with that, you want to say a few more things? Sure, yeah. Okay, you got one.
Yeah, so it was a huge help. STEM Action Center really, we went through a similar training with community partners, and some of them were public schools. And so like you said, kind of through this process, the library has been able to develop into not just a place where people come for programs and activities, but a permanent hub where they can walk in and find all of our maker stuff available to them, which has been huge for the students. And then they've gone back into the schools and they've told their teachers about the makerspace at the library. Then the teachers have come to us and said, hey, we heard about this from our students, how can we use this? So now after this school year, we've had every 4th and 5th grade class in the Valley through the library makerspace, and then been into the school to do lessons with them as well. And it's just going, yeah, so first step, 4th and 5th, then lower grades, then middle school, and high school.
That's awesome.
So again, if you're looking for a way to really connect into formal education and make some inroads there, certainly Valley of the Tetons has figured out how to really get public schools engaged and obviously visiting the library as well and interacting with the tools. Oh, what do you even say about salmon? Yeah, I know, right? I know you've got a presentation later, so I'm not going to steal your thunder, but I think a lot of the initiatives that we've been able to undertake have really come because of visions. Jeff, Francesca, Erica, who I borrowed permanently from Commission for Libraries, really understand the capacity and the ability of those who oversee community libraries. And so I know you'll be presenting later, but really the success of the programs and the outreach we've been able to do has really come as a brainchild of Jeff and Erica, and we continue to seek funding and grants. So again, we've got a number of irons in the fire looking for funding to be able to expand the rural library initiative, STEM initiative that we've been working on. So stay tuned. Hopefully we can get some additional funding and keep that program moving forward. And more to come. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. So with that, are there any other libraries, you might get like a minute or two, that want to share a quick story? I definitely don't think that was all inclusive. Okay.
So I am actually an elementary school librarian and at Harrison Elementary in Twin Falls. And we actually are a lucky school and we get to have a STEM class. But one of the things that I did through the STEM Action Committee was I applied for and received a 3D printer grant, and we did the Fab Slam competition. And it's been a great opportunity for my kids to develop as engineers and designers, and they are now designing things that they can 3D print to help raise funds for the various activities that they want at Harrison Elementary.
I'll just speak loud. I'm Beverly from Priest Lake Public Library, and I met Erica at Highland Conference, and she said, apply for a 3D printer, we'll give it to you. And so I went back and told my board, went to ILA in Boise, and I want a 3D printer, and I'm going to apply for a grant at Idaho STEM Action Center, and got it. And as soon as Priest Lake saw a 3D printer, it was like everybody was standing at the door. It was like, what is that thing? Now they were like lining up for what we can do next. Yay.
Hey, one more. Here we go.
So, my name's Ryan from the Idaho Library. A year ago, April, I was put in charge of our STEM and maker resources. And I had grand plans, and since then, a lot of things have taken up time, so those plans haven't quite come to fruition. But what has happened is, thanks to iSTEM and ICFL, we have been able to acquire this great suite of resources that we can put into effect. And I have been able to take them out in the community, to go to the schools, to go to community events and showcase them. And just bringing those resources out in the community to have community partners who are like knocking on my door daily, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Can we come help yet? Can we come? I feel bad because I have to keep saying, yeah, just a couple more pieces, but we're very grateful over at Idaho Falls for all your support.
Thank you. Hey, quick show of hands.
If you have received some kind of funding or training from the Idaho STEM Action Center, let's see those hands. Awesome! You know what the rumor is? Librarians write the best grants. Right? I mean, you guys you're writing grants, and the others in the pool are the math teacher and the science teacher. And you know, you guys just have, our reviewers tell us all the time that librarians write the best grants. You guys actually use complete sentences. You use proper grammar. Yeah, and so I think it really is super refreshing that so many of you take advantage of our opportunities. And obviously, many of you in this room have been very successful getting funding and training. Some of you may have heard the Brookings report. It's a report that just came out a couple weeks ago. And it painted a pretty bleak picture about the future of Idaho, and that our education system hasn't kept up with the human capital demands, kind of forecasting that we are going to begin economic slowdown and begin losing companies out of our state because we are not preparing our students to take these STEM jobs. It was really focused on our tech community and some of the STEM as well. And so it's kind of with that framing that we continue to push forward, we continue to look for funding, and we continue to attempt to educate the whole child and provide opportunities to many of you in the room. So there was a mention of iSTEM. How many of you are attending iSTEM next week or the week after? I know there's a few of you in the room, a 4-day professional development that we are able to provide, and it's Idaho educators, teaching Idaho educators. We have opened up many of our opportunities, so it's a blend of teachers and a blend of out-of-school and after-school educators. At first, we didn't quite know how this would go, because I think teachers are so focused, as I said, on standards and assessments and some of the other protocols that we have to follow. And you guys bring this side of creativity and flexibility that I think at times teachers in the classroom might not recognize that we can also infuse into our classroom. And so by blending after school and in-school educators together, we've seen some really positive outcomes, and we've heard from you as well that it helps you guys understand just learning about the standards and what does a 4th grader know and what should they be able to do based on what they learned in 3rd grade. And so we hope that you find this helpful, but we really do try to provide professional development for all. We also are pushing really hard in the world of computer science. So we are second in the nation to launch some of these policy mandates, which are envisioned to help move computer science forward. So definitely some stuff going on in the world of computer science, although our computer science budget was cut for next fiscal year. So any support that you perhaps could give us, because you are such great writers, we would certainly appreciate that. A couple other areas that we know that we need to focus on are some of our underrepresented populations. So right now, about 56% of the graduates from college are women, 56%. However, and they make up about 48% of our current workforce. But you'll see that in STEM, women really still continue to make up a very small percentage of that. So that's one of our focal groups, is women. We also focus on rural communities, so that's how the Rural STEM Initiative was born, so that we can really focus on rural communities. They're underrepresented in STEM. We also are focusing on Title I schools, or those communities that have high levels of free and reduced lunch populations, and diverse races and ethnicities. So those are kind of our focal points in the system. If we could get those particular groups to enter STEM jobs in a more robust rate, some of the discrepancies we see in those numbers, 7,800 unfilled jobs, we could actually fill them if we could move some of these additional populations into these STEM jobs. This particular study came out just last year. It's called Closing the Gap. While it's focused on young women, much of this data is also very applicable to young men. So the importance of mentors and giving young individuals an opportunity to meet a computer scientist, to talk to an engineer, to learn more about what a mathematician does, These percentages are gets to be creative on the job. After these young women got to talk with and meet computer scientists, engineers, and mathematicians, they came to recognize that those professions allow them to be creative. The next column over, young women are very focused on improving the world, doing good things for the world. And you can see that their perceptions of a computer scientist and mathematician shifted significantly just after having an opportunity to interact, engage, mentor, job shadow, talk with an individual in these professions. So having an opportunity to engage with your local industry really can make a difference, especially for young women in your communities. I really like this slide from the same report because it focuses on young women who are in clubs and STEM activities outside of the traditional school day compared to those who are not. And so those green bubbles are showing the shift. So this first one here, one of the questions they asked, I didn't ask it, makes you feel powerful doing STEM activities. So girls who are not in STEM, 34% of them said, I feel powerful doing STEM. I'm assuming it's brain power, versus those that are in clubs or some kind of out of school or after school activity, they have a really significant and different perception of themselves and essentially their brain power. I can do STEM. STEM isn't that hard. I mean, it's comments like that that young women are making just by having the opportunity to truly engage in it. They understand, that STEM is relevant, talking about careers and jobs. That's something I think you guys do really well, certainly better than educators in our classrooms. We're, again, focused a lot on standards. We try and talk jobs, but there's not always a lot of time. But you guys having that access and opportunity to provide career awareness is another important piece. And then knowing how to pursue a career in STEM. Many of those opportunities, as I said, are happening outside of school, not necessarily inside of schools. We also know that students really think STEM is fun. We've surveyed thousands of students, perhaps some of your students that have been involved in community, family, and community STEM events. We know that by just attending some type of career or family awareness event, it increases their awareness of careers that exist in their own communities. When you invite the local beekeeper, when you invite the local farmer and their self-driving tractor, I mean, there's something that really resonates with those kids when they can see these types of careers that are occurring right in their own community, and then parents don't have to fear that STEM means we're going to take their child, pick them up, drop them in Silicon Valley, and they'll never be seen or heard from again. That is not what the intent of STEM is. But you guys really can create a sense of community around STEM and give kids, families, the opportunity to see what is occurring and what is possible in their own backyard. Many parents would love their children to have access to a STEM mentor, so we have developed an online mentorship platform. So if you don't have or know a computer scientist in your own backyard, there's a way through our platform that you can connect with those people right through the comfort of your very own library. Another piece that I would like to change the narrative around is something you guys really understand, but I don't know that our legislators, teachers really understand how literacy is shifting in the 21st century. So many people still define literacy as ABCs, as reading. And in fact, last year, the legislature passed nearly $26 million that is going to literacy improving reading in schools. And I think, as you all know, literacy is much more than just ABCs. Students have to understand numeracy, their 1, 2, 3s. They've got to have a basic understanding of math, as well as computational thinking and literacy that comes from technology, knowing how to utilize those skills as well. Being able to just read is not enough anymore. You have to be able to digest data and numbers, and you have to know how to use technology. It's anticipated in the next few years, 80% of all jobs available are going to require some type of technological skill. Things are changing, and ABCs are no longer just enough, and that's what I let people know. Libraries know this. While the general public may still believe libraries are just books and ABCs, I think you guys are bringing forth an entirely different vision, and you're evolving, well, can I use that word? You're adapting and changing over time and really recognizing the potential and possibilities of libraries to really be this literacy hub and considering what it means in literacy in the 21st century. So I applaud and I appreciate the work that you do in literacy as well. That's not to say that reading is not important. Okay? They're all on the same level. It is absolutely still critically important that our kids can read. There's just these other little pieces that we know that they need to be able to do as well. We've been really busy impacting students and educators. We've been really busy trying to bring money in for STEM education. This year we're over $1 million in funds raised through grants and industry partnerships, and still, you'll see at the bottom there, we only fund 50% of those of you that ask for funding. So I know there's at least half of you in here that have probably been turned away from at least one of our opportunities. That keeps me up at night. That's not good enough. If you want to learn and you want to get training and resources, we should be able to provide that. So again, how can we improve Idaho's education system to ensure those that are eager to learn and want to improve their communities and bring these opportunities back can really do it? Because it breaks my heart having to send out those emails and say, sorry, we couldn't fund you. But that's the reality, and now with our $1 million budget cut, that's going to probably increase even more. So again, I will say I'm deeply sorry that we can't do more to support you, and that next year is going to be a really rough year on all of us, but I will be there talking to legislators. You guys will maybe be talking to legislators, and we'll see if we can get this thing back on track and keep writing grants and do the best we can. So it's wickedly disappointing to me, it keeps me up at night, but we're doing the best we can. So we've come up with this creative way of raising money. Has anyone taken advantage of our public-private partnership yet in here? Awesome. Okay, this is a pretty new opportunity. So the way the public-private partnership works is, let's say you find an external funder. Perhaps it's a business or the local PTA. It could even be maybe you've got a university or some other type of partnership that you're looking at. And you've got a project that you're going to run that, let's say, costs $15,000. The partner says, hey, I'll give you $10,000 to help you launch that project. You're like, well, that's not enough. We can't get the project done that way. So we have a way that you could apply to us for $15,000. You could say, hey, funder, send your money to the STEM Action Center. They can amplify your funding, and they might be able to match that 50 cents per dollar, and then you can get the funding that you need for your entire project. So as you guys are out looking for funders, we'll take funders as small as $1,000. Doesn't have to be super exorbitant amounts, but we really want to find a way to let business and industry take the lead, public-private partnership, and us being able to support and amplify that need to ensure that you get what you need to run your STEM programs. So please keep us in mind. If you want to know more about that, just reach out. We have it right on our website, stem.idaho.gov. Click the Apply for Funding button. It's closed right now, our fiscal year is ending, but you can still read all of the information about our public-private partnership. And that helps us raise money and reach our $1 million fundraising goal. We don't take a single cut of that money. It will all come into us, and it will all come back out to you. We have a foundation if they need a 501c3. No, I sound like a salesperson. We have a foundation if they need a 501c3, and we're just like you, an Idaho education tax credit. So they wouldn't lose any of the benefits by moving that money to us, getting it on our books so legislators can see we have a lot of partners, and then we just help amplify that funding. So we are trying to be more active. So those of you that are Snapchatters and Instagrammers, I see Jackie back there smiling. AP Biology, you missed it. So we've got a lot of different kind of social media platforms that we're using, and so please follow us. We are going to have a computer. Sign up for our newsletter. Those go out monthly. They talk about all of our upcoming opportunities, and keep writing phenomenal grants. As I said, you guys are some of the best. Obviously, at least 75% of you have received funding from us, so you guys are definitely, you're on the grants for sure. So with that, I think we have a couple minutes. If some of you have questions, two, three, okay. So if you guys have some questions, that I might be able to answer.
So my question is, oh, this is really tough. My question is, you said that there were like, what was it, 7,800 or something, STEM jobs? So what's the bulk of that? Is it like engineering or is it mathematics? Is like you said, farming almost? What are we talking about?
Yeah, right, perfect. Can I show you guys a really cool website? So if you go to stem.idaho.gov and you go to our resources portal, you can actually see exactly what those jobs are. Tammy, didn't you have internet? So we've tried to make it pretty easy so that you can search these jobs by region. Going to stem.idaho.gov, which, why didn't that type, Tammy? Oh, STEM Action Center, we're the first search that comes up on your search bar. That's awesome. Okay. So from here, you'd be able to see our apply for funding button. Sign up for our newsletter if you haven't done that yet with that little tab. So we've got a resources portal, and on that portal we have been including some workforce statistics. So if you click into the STEM workforce statistics, you will be able to see a couple different tabs. Slowly. Okay. So STEM Monthly gets updated each month, and that's where you'd be able to see some of the hard-to-fill jobs. So the bulk of those are going to be nurses. Almost everything else is computer science. And so you can also drill into these by region with some of these different tabs here. So STEM Annual is what I check each month that shows the number of unfilled jobs here in April. It shows the number of those that are hard to fill, which means they've been open for 90 days or longer, meaning employers are starting to give up. Don't think they're going to find anyone for that. So you can see it that way. And then we just added some new tabs here that are pretty cool. So you can actually go into your region here, and it'll resort this entire table. You can look at, again, if you've got someone that comes in to visit you, they say, hey, I've got, a high school diploma. You can uncheck everything, check high school diploma, click South Central, and it'll pull up the jobs that are available this month. It updates every month in that community. So we do think we've been trying to create some resources. So if you're in South Central, again, a person comes in and says, hey, looking for some jobs, but I've got my high school diploma, what might be some choices? And so then I can pull those up and let you know. It even gives some projected growth rates within that particular region. So that could be a really kind of nice tool that might help you see what those jobs are, because they do kind of change and vary over time. But right now, nursing and computer science are definitely high need areas. Is Hemingway going to start talking? Okay, so we are going to be over at the STEM table, and I won't try to give you logistics. I could be pointing in the wrong direction. I will turn that microphone over. Thank you so much. If you guys have questions, I will be there. Thank you.